One. Welcome to another Friday evening session of Cat Space. With me is Buckets, and of course my mentor and my friend for life, Horsy. Good evening. How are you? Thank you for joining us.
G'day, Kat. Yeah, I'm good. You well?
Not too bad. So tonight's topic that I wanted to discuss with you is Australian politics. Obviously, we know what's going on. Let's start. Kevin Rudd versus Rupert Murdoch.
Is Kevin Rudd doing something now? Is he? I thought he was Prime Minister 20 years ago.
Kevin Rudd has, for a while, been doing a petition against the Murdoch Corporation because he believes that, Rupert Murdoch is too far right-wing conservatism and, how it impacts everyday Australians. And from what I just read, apparently in the petition, get this, 1,000 names were forged, fake. Boom, mic drop.
What for? They were fake.
Fake named on a petition.
Really?
Yep. And this is going to be disastrous.
So what was the petition in aid of, Kat? What was it for?
Actually it was, to go against, as I said, the Murdoch Corporation.
Okay, so basically
the far right wing conservative medium.
Okay, so basically what was happening was Kevin Rudd, or how he likes to call himself, K Rudd now, because that's supposed to be hip and cool and whatever, doesn't really do much for him. But
just don't say it very quickly. Yes, carry on, Phil.
But basically there had been a new change of law where anything that was basically online, any news medium that was online needed to be charged. So where you would normally have free news, that was going to change because
like via a web browser or Google or something like that. That's the Google thing, isn't it?
Yes.
That's been going on.
That's right. So one of the biggest problems that Google had was they were like, okay, we provide like a bridge to all these news services, but we don't want to have to pay for the news that they're providing because it's not our news that we're providing. We're just providing the bridge.
They're just a conduit or a channel. That's right. Yes.
Yes, but they were going to get charged by the government as well. They didn't think that was particularly fair. For some reason, Rupert Murdoch was really happy about that. And I think the reason why he was happy about that is because all the internet news that was online, Rupert Murdoch couldn't really compete with that. He couldn't, because a lot of his papers, that actually had a price tag with it, but all the free news didn't. And so what was paying for all the free papers was advertising. That's how they were alive. So one of the issues was Rupert Murdoch didn't particularly wanted to kind of even out the playing field and wanted there to be a charge for all news, not just paper news or newspapers or magazines or whatever. He wanted all news to basically have a price tag attached to it. And the problem with that is that you have bigger companies or organizations like the ABC that would basically have to grovel effectively to the Liberal government to say, we're a free company providing free news, and you're asking us to pay a tax on that or a price.
Effectively, it is a tax, yes. And the ABC Charter, which was introduced years and years ago, and the reason why the ABC exists is to provide information to the community and news to the community, and it always was. Actually, I remember in the 80s, they talked about it costing a taxpayer 8 cents a day because the ABC was funded by taxes. But you could turn on the radio or turn on the television. You could access ABC services effectively for free. So that's right. I think the problem is where the charge is being levied on Google, who are arguing that they're just a channel and they're not actually a news service as such, and where the money is going, which is going to the Australian government. I think that's what people aren't happy about here.
Well, technically, we could be charged as news because we have thought-provoking news stories. See, that could be considered news.
Now,
Depends on the definition. It's more comment than news, but it depends on the definition. But you're right, it could happen.
Here's my talking point question. My first one is, with all this happening, how's it affecting or going to affect us as a nation, us as a country, us as a people to begin? Like, how's it going to affect all of us? And, the whole process of he said, where do we stand?
It could be if Google pull out of Australia, that'll affect a lot of us. When you turn your phone on to access Google, you won't be able to, I guess.
Well, look at all the free services that Google actually do provide, like Gmail, like Google Maps,
Like Hotmail.
Yeah, exactly. All of those
funded by
all the services that we take for granted on a regular basis, which is provided for free. But we basically access almost all of the time because they take 77% of the share market as far as all that share
that's Google,
would basically just come to an end. So then we'd have to basically go back to really terrible search engines like Ask Jeeves kind of thing. I mean, does anyone even use Ask Jeeves anymore?
I've never heard of it. There used to be one I used years ago called Dogpile, but I don't know whether that exists anymore. Sorry, Kat?
Ask Jeeves is very popular back in the day. I used it a lot. But you actually, speaking of topic points, you brought up my second question is that will Google pull out of Australia? And we've answered that, so we can actually...
See, the problem is, as we said, Google is just a channel, not a service provider. And the other problem is where the funds are going. I mean, Google's search engines and such is funded, I understand, by advertising. So when you go to the Google page, you see ads.
Yes.
And if you access certain things, then you'll see another ad, or there's a video ad sometimes. It's a bit like YouTube has video advertisements before you watch a video. But see, I don't have a problem myself with the idea of paying for a service. I never have. If you have your car serviced or change its tires, or you go and buy a loaf of bread, or you go and do this or that, or you normally pay for most services. There's the odd services that are free for various reasons, but you generally pay for a service, even if it's a very small amount. So personally, I don't have a problem with paying for even to use the Google search. I mean, it would be a very negligible amount that you would pay per search, something like 5 cents, I guess, something like that. And if everybody paid 5 cents per search, they'd still be raking in the money. A case in point is Wikipedia. For some time, when you go to Wikipedia, they've been putting up a little thing every few weeks that says, hey, if everybody gave the price of a cup of coffee per week to Wikipedia, then we'd be able to keep doing what we do and do it even better. And, that's not much to pay, but I wonder how many people pay it. And, they're right. If they're providing a service, setting up a website, even if it is a channel through which you see other things on the internet, I don't really have an objection to paying for that service. It's okay. That's not a problem. Whether most people agree with me, I don't know. But what do you guys think? Would you be prepared to pay 5 cents per Google search?
No, I don't think I want to ever. No. I mean, I'm sorry, but it's no.
Well,
that's my stance on it. Because one, it's free, and two, it's global, and three, why should I be paying 5 cents every time?
Well, it is free.
Like I must use Google like a million times a day, so that's like I've probably paid a few millions by then, but no, I don't think I want to.
Well, you can basically imagine if that little service was cut off because we didn't basically pay the bills on time to look up Google. So how much information would basically be hidden from us if we decided not to pay Google? I mean, think of it as a water bill, right? So if we turn off the utilities of a water bill and say, no, I'm not going to pay the water bill anymore, well, the water company is just going to go, oh, that's okay, we just won't supply the water.
So what's the difference between that and Google providing their service? If you don't pay for it, they'll cut it off to you. What's the difference?
The difference
I mean,
is,
you wouldn't expect to have the water coming through the tap and not pay water bill for 10 years and still say to the water board, okay, no, it's still provide water because that's the service you must provide. I'm not going to pay for it. What's the difference?
the difference is basically that there could be some, well, I like to think that information is power and information is informative. And so there could be something that would be very, very important for your life, which you really need to know about. And if you didn't know about because you didn't pay the Google bill, you would be in a lot of trouble.
So isn't it worth paying the 5 cents per search in that case? It's still not worth it, is it?
I would just like someone else to pay for it.
Oh, yes. I'd like someone else to pay my water bill every time it comes. I think, goodness, is it that much? It's just water that comes out of the tap. But, you know, it's anyway, they're my views. I wouldn't mind. The problem is with the paying money to the government, the problem is the model itself, not the concept, as far as I see it.
The third topic.
But no, the money shouldn't be going to the government. They've got enough money. They take enough of our money. They don't need more.
Oh, yeah.
And they don't use it very wisely. If they use it more wisely, then it'd be great and they wouldn't need as much.
Yeah.
Well, I think what a lot of people forget is Google isn't actually government. And although it does provide a lot of information to government services, like, say, the MyGov app and all of that, it actually doesn't have to provide those services at all by law. If it
that's
wants
right.
to,
That's right.
they can go to America and not even have a Google office in Australia. It's their choice to do so.
I wouldn't blame them if they did pull out. In fact, I'd go so far as to say good on them for making a stand if they do pull out, regardless of the effect on the many people who rely on their search engine for information. I mean, we have, I think that the information that we need to get, we'll get one way or another. If we really need to know about something, then we'll be told one way or another.
I think.
I mean, 20 or 30 years ago, we didn't have Google, we didn't have the internet, we didn't use the internet as we do today. We didn't have all this information at our fingertips. If we wanted to do research, we had to go to the library and we had to actually work at it. Now we can just sit at a computer or sit on our phone while we're having a cup of coffee, and by the time the coffee's gone cold or we finished it, we've got the information we need at our fingertips. And we've become so used to that we expect it. And to go back to a situation where we can't find that information so easily, we just can't believe it's even possible. But it's just the way things used to be. And it's just a matter of getting used to the way things are. And if something's so important that we need to know it, I reckon we'll know it. And if we don't know it and it doesn't hurt us, then it doesn't hurt us.
Good point. I was going to say, speaking of that, my next talking point is with Kevin Rudd's petition against, what's happening.
Rupert Murdoch and his power, yes.
So, should Australians be divided, or will we be divided against what we are told to believe and what our stance is, or what we are made to believe and what our stance should be? Or should we be able to look for ourselves, learn for ourselves, educate ourselves and going, this is not for me as an Australian, but is Kevin Rudd's petition as I don't know if it's smart enough, but is it smart enough to go, considering we're supposed to be one and free, are we going to be divided on the issue of what we are being told, what we are being fed, and whether
See, I don't think we ever have. I don't think we ever have been in control of what we're being fed by news media, even back in the day before the internet, when it was just the mainstream media, television, radio, newspapers. There's always been talk of bias. In fact, we mentioned the ABC before, and the ABC has been said in recent years, anyway, to be very biased towards, I think, the left of politics. But I mean, I even back in the mid 20th century, when you read the newspaper, I don't think you really had any control over what you were fed. We have more control over what information we receive and what news we receive now with the internet than we did 50 years ago. So as far as the question of the media being controlled and us being fed certain pieces of information, I reckon that's always been the case. I mean, I don't know whether you can find a purely unbiased news source, because all the news sources are run by, the news is compiled by people who get the news from various other people. And so people are infallible. So there are going to be mistakes made, and there are going to be things that are left out and other things that are put in that shouldn't have been from time to time. It might be pretty good, but it's not going to be perfect. So I don't know whether we really have whether it would make any difference. And do most Australians realise the media, their news stories they're being fed are being controlled, and do they really care? Or are they just trying to get on with their own lives and, like all of us, just make $1 if we can and pay the water bill?
Well, actually, I can confirm that one of the things that was happening during Trump's campaign is that a lot of people got off the mainstream media and then just jumped to the alternative media, because they were just pretty much sick of the bias that was in the mainstream media. And never had there been a time where alternative media was about as popular, if not more popular, than mainstream media. Because they're just like, you know what, I'm tired of hearing the same views over and over again. I want to basically see something that's a little more truthful and a little less biased. And I actually remember.
How do you know that? How do you judge that media source, and how do you actually know? What have you got to compare it to, apart from other sources of that same news?
Well, that's right.
That's the question.
If there's 100 people that basically agree, then you can basically say, oh, well, that must be true. But what's to say that those 100 people aren't biased themselves?
There are a hell of a lot of people in Germany before the Second World War who agreed that Hitler was a great guy and what they were doing was a terrific idea. But history tells us that maybe they were wrong and maybe they were being led up the garden path. I mean, that's not a news question. It's a question of leadership and what people are being fed. So they all thought that they were on the right track.
My fourth question is, obviously we know in the US, a separate country to us, they have a far-right conservatism, far-right wing, versus a far-left democratic value, different lifestyle, different choices, different beliefs. In Australia, my fourth question is similarities between the state's far left and far right and left wing and Australia's far right and left wing, which is Labor Liberal. The similarities between
used to be
is so similar, it's so strong that even here, people from all walks of life, I mean, we've got expats from the US, you know, who live here, who, you know, are also divided on this issue of, you know, the similarities between each other is, don't tell us what we want to hear, tell us what we should hear. And this is our value as people. I mean, the similarities are very strong.
But that's a lot of the time from their point of view. Like I used to really like a journalist called not Alan Jones. I hate Alan Jones.
John Laws?
No, he was an American actually. He was American that got kicked off YouTube. and he used to have a lot of conspiracy theories. I can't remember his name now. But I used to really like him, but I liked pretty much everything that he talked about, except for the fact that he loved guns. Really, 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 really loved guns. And when I heard that, I was like, I can't believe I'm following this guy. But he was really strong on that. And I was just like, I can't believe I've been a fan of him all this time when I completely disagree with what he's talking about right now.
See, that doesn't mean that he was right on all his other views, does it, Philip? It just means that you agreed with him and that you had the same worldview as him, perhaps, as far as it went, until he started talking about guns. But I'm not sure I'd trust. We're talking about right-wing and left-wing politics and what we're being told, right, what we should be told. I'm not sure I'd trust the Australian government to tell me what I should be told. In fact, I don't think I would. But as far as I understand it, let's just clarify what right-wing and left-wing politics means before we go any further. As far as I understand it, if you go too far to the left, you get communism or a socialist state. And if you go too far to the right, you get very, very conservative people who, again, don't allow you to do very much at all. Am I right in that, or is there a broader understanding of left and right wing politics?
I think you're kind of right. So if you've if you've got too much of right wing thinking, then you'll find that it's not a very good place, because there would be a lot of corruption within business. In saying that, if we don't accept some right-wing views, you'll find that it will be very hard for businesses to actually employ employees, because they won't have the money to do it. And the harder you make it for businesses to employ staff, the harder it is to get jobs in this country. In saying that, if you support the left, and you're always supporting the workers, I mean, it's going to be great for the workers, but if you support them too much to the point where you've basically taken away all the business rights, or all the business incentives, I should say, they're not going to want to run a business because there's nothing in it for them. And that's the dilemma you have. So you've got to find a balance between the two.
So you want the middle ground, really?
That's right. There has to be a middle ground between the two.
But there still has to be enough freedom in society and in the way government manages the society to make people feel as if they are free. So you can't have it too far either way. But I don't know about the difference between Australian media and US media. I'm not sure. Can you enlighten me on that?
Say that again. Sorry, sorry.
Australian media and American media, as per your question there, your discussion point. The similarities and differences between the right and left wing media in Australia and the US. I'm not familiar with the difference.
Okay, as I was saying, like over there they have, as you've said, which is over there, if you go way too far to the left, you've got socialism, and if you go too far to the right, you're a conspiracy theorist and a capitalist, and you don't like what the Democrats or the democratic way of life and being a citizen. Here we've got Liberal and Labor. They're similar, because if you're too far Labor, you're never going to be happy with what you're being told. And if you go too far left, you're not going to be happy with the right, because again, you're being told something that you didn't think, you're being told something to believe, and both sides don't know what to choose or what to believe. That's why when it comes to whether it's by voting or whether it's by arguing or whether it's by debating, one or the other, our country here, this country is so divided, because who do we trust to give us the truth, the honest truth, and nothing but the truth. Hello.
Oh, it's a cat.
Hey, kitty. You know,
You know our
There is a
our
cat
ratings
here.
are going to go up because there's a cat here.
In fact, there are
get a
two
dog.
there are two cats.
yeah, me and the other one. But back to what I was saying is that here in this country of ours is that we expect our government to always tell us the truth and nothing but the truth. But then again, as I've said,
I hadn't expected that for years, but
We-
carry on.
we've been told and spoon-fed things that they want us to be told and believed, yet we should be making up our own minds to no, you should tell me what I should hear, not what I need to hear, because it's not what this is why it's divided, because
I actually think
I
the
don't
answer to
believe
that
anything
is to
anymore.
I think the answer to that, perhaps we could wrap it up on this
Yep.
point, maybe, is to continually be outspoken about what you believe, which I tend to be. And I have people telling me calling me names quite often. They don't actually enter into the discussion very ably, but they're happy to call me names just because they don't agree with the point I'm making. But the thing is to when you make a point, you've got to accept that other people won't agree with you, and that's okay. That's not a problem. They're entitled to their opinion, and we're all entitled to express our opinion.
That's what makes us human.
And express your opinion, but express it well. Make your points and make it clear what you mean and why you're saying what you're saying. And regardless of what happens, just keep doing it. And when people come back to you and call you names, you say, well, explain why you don't agree with me, and enter into a discussion. You don't be rude. You don't be have a go at other people. You just keep being outspoken about what you believe. And if all Australians did this, we'd have a hell of a different way of government, I reckon, and society would be a lot better. I'm always been annoyed how Australians just accept the status quo and accept what the government tells them. Oh, it's the government tells me it's the law, it must be good for me, when in many cases it isn't. So I think the answer is, as I said, to keep speaking and making the point about what you believe, regardless of what others say. And accepting what they say is their opinion, which is just as valid as yours. Whether or not they or you get what you want, that's immaterial in a way. But to keep expressing what you believe, because if you believe it and you're committed enough to express an opinion on it, then it's worth doing. There you go.
My final thought is, or question is, what is this going to mean for the future? I'll leave it at that one.
Yeah, if you could basically tell us what you think about what it could mean in the future, that would be great. And we could get some comments and
Some subscribers
and
likes,
and perhaps even
tell us what you think is important for the future. Let's food for thought.
Okay, beautiful.
Master Horse's words, food for thought.
I'm not going to tell you because we'll be here all night.
Exactly.
That's why we're going to get other people to tell us for us.
Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Good night, all.
Good night. We look forward to seeing you next Friday.
Right.
Ta-da.
Hey,
Bye.
Bye.